review our minutes from April 11th to, or approve them if you already have. So have you guys had a chance to review the minutes?
If I did
So
back,
I'm looking
but
back
not,
at
I haven't looked at it again.
Honestly, I'm in the same boat, so that's all good. And it's hard because it was so long, you know, it feels so long ago. I was not at that meeting. I was on my honeymoon.
yay.
So I know it feels like so long ago. So I just can't weigh in too much on if it's accurate.
Were the minutes in the email from you, Jerry?
Yeah. Yes, they were.
Yes, and I have it open, so I could forward it to you very quickly.
You could. For some reason, I got the
Right.
agenda, and I'm just maybe it's in a different place, but
I think it should be part of that packet.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. Then I just scrolled.
Yeah, it's in the
Yeah,
packet,
so,
like
yeah,
right
if you just scroll.
underneath the agenda.
Okay, I have the agenda open, and now I'm scrolling. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, great. We're getting back in the swing of things here, right? It's all good.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the minutes as they are. Jerry, I would ask, I guess, since Andrea wasn't present, normally if you're not present, you would vote, like you would abstain from approving minutes, and there's only two of us who are there.
Yeah,
I don't know if we can approve the minutes.
you can't. You'll have to put them
But-
over to the next
Oh.
meeting.
Okay.
Right, because
I did-
we have a quorum to run the meeting, but we don't have a quorum of who was at the last meeting
Mm.
to approve
That makes
those.
great sense. Thanks for bringing that up, Steve. Good point. Okay, so we'll carry that over to next month, unless Chris or Leland hop on and we can get back to it maybe before the meeting's end. Okay, so what is number 3? Discussion of growing season.
Yeah, that's something Chris wanted on. If any
Yeah,
of
no,
you
I think
have,
that's
any ideas about this past growing season.
definitely.
I
I'm
will say
just
there's something very strange that happened. I have a very old white lilac, and at about the middle of September, all leaves dropped off it. And I got very upset, and I called the egg station, and they said, well, wait until spring. Don't take it down. Leave it be. It might just be too much water, because I do have a very high water table in that area. The lilac tree is covered with white lilac blooms right now. Absolutely covered.
Oh, so it's blooming in fall.
It's suddenly blooming. It was blooming this spring, and then in September it dropped all its leaves, and it's blooming now. And yesterday when I drove down from, I was up in Woodbury, and I'm driving down, and suddenly I noticed on a front lawn was a beautiful Japanese cherry tree in bloom. Not full bloom, spotty, but it was in bloom. So yes, world's upside down.
It's
funny
was
that you
the
say that
weird
because I
growing
have two
Yeah.
lilac bushes, lost all its leaves. And the other has full leaves still. But mine is not yet in bloom, so I don't know what's going on with it.
Well,
But
Interesting.
don't do anything till spring.
okay, I won't. On that note, I mean, the one thing I would say about this growing season, we all know how wet it was, and there were many calls for flood relief, many options for farmers to seek flood relief. At the time, I didn't think about posting that to the town site, but in future years, that might be a helpful potentially. I don't know that anyone actually would go to the Woodbridge Town website first to look for that. But it could be a thing.
I think that's a great idea. I had a similar thought, Christina, but maybe later than you did, because something came across my work email about DOAG's flood restoration grant program and for farmers. And I honestly thought the same. So I do think you know, that's part of our purpose is to provide farmers with information and resources. I find it to be hard to coordinate though over the summer because we don't meet regularly. And you know, we're all obviously so busy during the growing season. So what could be a way we can navigate that, that type of decision making?
I think what we would sort of be better served to have a standing site that points people to resources for those things, because those things come up all the time, and it really is people doing that regularly. From from Connecticut, no, you know, and I'm on all these lists, so I get the same thing, you know, through 6 different sources, which is fine. And that's like, if you're plugged into these things, that's what happens. But I think if we had a site that had the resource list or mailing lists, you know, that said, this is where you get the Yukon pest update, this is where you get the UMass pest update, this is where you get the DOE, I think, to some of these lists. Just because it really can't, I would be surprised if there was one of us or among us who can be sending out all the updates that might be relevant. But if we had you know, we're pointing to resources that could be updated annually, you know, that is I think a more reasonable task for us. You know, if things change in Woodbridge over the years and there's someone who can more readily coordinate or who wants to be doing that, then, you know, wonderful. But I think a resource site might be a good.
So to clarify,
place for people to
Steve,
say.
would that resource site be housed by us, the Agriculture Commission, or an outside entity?
I wonder if it's a good question. We don't really have a thing, right? So maybe there's, you know, the Woodbridge Town website has lots of tentacles, you know, so you kind of have to know what you want to look for to find something there. So figuring out where is the right place for that to live is a good question. If someone were searching, so we could say this is where you should go. So we can think about that.
Yeah, maybe
Where
we
on
could.
the town website it could something, a resource page for farmers.
And we could look to maybe some other towns with ag commissions and see how, you know, if there's a model out there we can reference and emulate.
That's a
Yeah.
good idea. I'm looking at our Ag Commission page now. And the resources that we had posted earlier this year in February you have to click through to a different page. And I think, Jerry, you had described sort of the web reason why it is there, but I'm wondering if maybe we could edit that document, but also, or, you know, add to it, but also currently it reads a message from the Agriculture Commission, including grant opportunities.
Yeah.
Maybe we could just change that that line to, you know, click here for relevant resources or resources, including grants and listservs, or I don't know, whatever we think might actually help people know, like, this is what I'm going to click on in order to, you know, see. Because if I if I were looking through, I might read the message, but I also might not,
Okay.
unless it was interesting grant opportunities. I think maybe we could put on the agenda for next meeting. Maybe we could all bring a list of ideas of what we would add to that.
That's a great idea of resources to share.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a key thing would be like listserv sign up, so that you can get on the DOAG
Oh,
listserv,
yeah.
so you can get on their
Mhm.
messages, so you can get on the Farm Service Agency listserv, so you can get on the New Connecticut Farmer Alliance. Like those listservs send out all of the things. If you're on CTRC and D, you get, and that's why I get 6 of them, because I'm on all of those things. So they often
And it would
cross
include
list.
all of the things that
Um,
are on
yeah.
this resource list, including the grants and
Yeah.
things like that. So I think that's
Yeah,
a great
exactly.
idea. And yeah, that, rather than us being the arbiters of the information, it's already being done by those groups.
Absolutely. Good thinking. So we'll just make sure Chris and Leland are looped in with that request to, to present some resources at next meeting. Any other, I mean, that wasn't really about the growing season, but I like the natural, like how we started there. Is there any other comments we want to make about our growing season?
I would just say, oh, go ahead.
You can go ahead.
I just want to know just how different this year is than last. We are seeing the climate, extremes on last year, drought and heat, and this year on wet. And I think the year before in 21 was very significant on wet too, with multiple hurricanes late in the season and pretty big rain events each month. This was, more consistent rain than huge rain events, although there were plenty of large rain events within it. So just it creates challenges, and I think particularly people who are closer to rivers and water sources are more challenged in a year like this because of flooding, which maybe relevant in parts of Woodbridge and not others, depending where you're located. But yeah, I would just note that being a pretty big difference, and those are the swings we're going to see and need to be prepared for.
Thanks for sharing that, Steve. And I agree with that articulation. It is kind of amazing what we're living through and having to adapt to and respond to. Christina, you started talking. Do you have something to add, or?
Just sort of a personal testimonial that this group was instrumental in allowing products from other farms to be sold at farm stands. And I've carried some hot sauce of Andrea's and some things from Clovernook Farm, and taken some flowers as part of the Massaro Fall Flower CSA. And I'm very grateful for that opportunity and those connections. And I think it's been pretty good. I talked to somebody the other day who said how excited they were to learn about other farms by shopping at my farm stand. Yeah, anyway, it was nice.
So nice to hear. That's partly why we advocated for that. So how nice to have that realized. And as a fellow farmer who needed a place for distribution, I can't even tell you how grateful I am that task was accomplished, but also, Christina, that you were willing to sell some of our farm products. So
Great.
Thank you, Farmers Helping Farmers. And I guess I'll add to that note that this was Sperry Falls Farm first real growing season. I mean, we've produced and have grown since we established a few years ago, but it was the first time we built and used our farm stand, and kind of worked out some of the kinks of that management. And though there's still more to sort through, we had our first, I would say, like commercial yield of blueberries, which was a big, you know, endeavor for us. And so, and our blueberries did really, really well this season. Sold our pesto for the first time. But our basil did not do as well this season. So anyways, exciting stuff. And I'm sure, I'm sure Chris would have some things to remark about the weather, and I'd be curious to hear how his growing season went too. So maybe Chris and Leland can add that when they, next meeting. Any other notes about the growing season? Okay, let's move on to it. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I'm just going to add, Chris just called me to say he's been trying to get on the computer.
Oh no.
It's just not going. So he's still trying, so maybe he'll pop in, but
Okay.
if not, maybe we'll have to have an offline session and see if we can get his WebEx sorted. But
thank you, Steve, for that. Okay, so review of USDA communication regarding soils designation. There's not a person assigned to that, but I believe, Christina, was it you communicating with folks from USDA?
Sort of about a different matter.
Yeah, about grant. Okay. So do we know who was tasked with this communication? Because it's not familiar to me.
Well, it looks like the message came to the first selectman's office. Jerry, can you remind us, was this communication sent to Chris?
No, this redesignation of farmlands in Woodbridge was sent to the first selectman's office. It's from the Department of Agriculture. And I shared it with the Ag Commission and with the Conservation Commission.
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, this was
Anything like
this
this
is
always
a
comes.
statewide change.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was confused when I first read this agenda, but now
So we didn't
my-
seek this out. It was, it's
Correct.
just an update of the designation
Right.
change.
yeah.
Mhm.
So there's really no
This
action here.
specific communication.
Oh, no, there's no action.
Right.
It's information only.
Yeah. So they sent out a statewide notice like about this change. So, and this looks like the specific to Woodbridge, but yeah, the USDA NRCS sent out that these designations would be shifting, and they were changing some criteria to include more locally important farmland. Ultimately, it's just about how they protect soil. So, like the different designations prioritize land in different places, and so yeah, there was a statewide notice that went out. I think it was September or like earlier mid-September statewide. So I hadn't seen this until this is specific to Woodbridge, but there was sort of a notice that this was coming.
Mm-hmm.
I might be able to share that because I have that elsewhere.
Steve, do you happen to know if it's reflected in their mapping? Yeah.
I don't think it is, but that was I can look.
Okay.
Because that was in the communication as well. That it may be that all these things are being updated. It might not be up to date in their mapping.
I would be
that
curious to know
communication.
when that will, when that will be reflected in the
Sure.
spatial data layer. Because we should take a look. I'm curious
Mhm.
to see.
Yeah, I'll see what I can find and share it
Thank you.
after the meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks, Jerry, for sharing that, the communication with us. And I don't know that it will hugely affect us, but it may, and it also may be good to know. So,
Absolutely. It's good to be in the loop, if nothing else, right? um, so yes, thank you. All right, let's move on to agenda item 5, which I'm glad is on here because I saw it in the meeting minutes that concerns about trespassing have arisen or were brought in general. So let's discuss. Have there been other reports, or in your experience, Christina, have you been having issues? And yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I have not posted signage. I do sometimes get people coming from the park, from the playground, over walking their dogs and things like that. In the summer, in the growing season, if the grass is high enough, no one walks through. They see that it's not accessible. So I found that it wasn't necessarily worth it. Yeah, I haven't had a big issue with that.
So did you was your intent to procure your own signs, or did you formally approach the Board of Selectmen or the town to see if they would post signs
Hey,
or if they
Chris,
even have
can't get
signs?
on.
I'm sorry, Jerry?
Huh.
Oh, she's on the phone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just invited you again, and it just try it again.
If you've got the chat
No,
open, sorry to, well, I put the notice from the
Yeah.
NRCS about the soil maps. I'll send it separately in email.
Oh, cool.
All right.
Steve, that's
Okay.
awesome.
But that's it's in the chat. So that was like their announcement that went out over email that you can see as a web page. But
My
I'll throw
internet
it
is
into the
so
whole
slow
commission.
here. I'm not gonna dare open it in this hotel, but I will
Yeah.
definitely. I look forward to reviewing that. Thank you. So Christina, did you ask the town if they have and would be willing to post signs, or were you doing this considering this independently?
Planning to do independently, if anything, but that is a good question on if the town does have signage. I guess I can't think of a specific place where that is. Would there maybe be any on the border of Alice Newton or anything, Jerry, that might
Alice Newton doesn't belong to the town.
Yeah, that's the Woodbridge Park Association.
okay.
But I'd imagine on Fitzgerald's there would need to be some.
No, they have no. They've posted
There are-
no signs.
There are the community garden signs,
Yes, that's about the only one I know of.
and I don't know if the town does that or if the community garden did.
I mean, I don't think it's an unreasonable ask. I mean, this is town-owned property. It's their property and it's kind of in their best interest to have boundaries clearly marked. And signs function as such or can function as such. If farmers are having problems with trespassing on town-owned land, I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't the town be liable if something happened, or no? Is that covered in the lease agreement?
In my lease, the town is named as additional insured.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's your insurance.
So
You-
if
you've-
someone does come on, I think
Mhm.
we would cover the town.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
you still can't get on.
What do you think, Steve and Christina? Is it
Wait a
worth
minute.
asking the board
All right, give it to me.
about this.
I guess I'm curious to
Hold on.
hear how, you
Wait,
know,
what's the first
from
letter
Cliff
you
and
just
others,
said?
like how much of an issue it might be.
Yeah, hold on a minute. I mean,
Um,
How much of an issue trespassing might be?
like, yeah, I guess I want to have a better sense of how much this is occurring. I remember Chris noting it, you know, in the
Yeah, I think
spring, and
Keith
I'm
Arnold's.
just, yeah, I'd like to hear more.
Yes,
Um,
sure. And
I think Keith's concern was with teenagers driving on the property, which
right.
I think is a
Yeah.
different and significant risk, different than a walker who may come in contact with poison ivy or trip or whatever, but certainly does more damage and poses more of a threat if you're in a moving vehicle. And I think that could happen anywhere, signposted or not. But yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure. I can ask Chris if he can't join us. I can ask Chris offline if he has talked to the chief at the police department, Capiello, as the meeting minutes from April said he planned to do. And I can see if from Chief Capiello if he's gotten calls, you know, from Keith or others about similar issues. Because you're right, that is a very different type of trespassing. That I mean, gosh, that's crop damage, and you know, that has other major implications. So I will pen just died, but I will call um the police department to make some inquiries. I do I'm sensitive to Keith Arnold issues because I feel like just he's been a farmer on this land for so long, and it's such a you know, it's a multi-use property, and so I want Keith to feel supported by us, and like his concerns are, you know, really being addressed. However we can facilitate that. I'd like to make sure he feels like we are serving. I mean, and not just him, everybody, of course. But. Bear with me as I just write this down. I haven't heard, no one has contacted me directly about any trespassing issues. I assume that's true across the board here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just on the phone with Chris, and I've sent him all the information again to a different email address. So we'll see if he can get
Okay.
on.
Thank you, Jerry. And Jerry, I see on the minutes from April that it says you would research signage.
Yes,
think-
and I got nowhere with my questions.
Okay.
Supposedly, Public Works was going to get back to me, and they didn't. And I think it's just something that they have to make a decision on, and it has to be researched further as to what the language would be.
For whatever it's worth, I'm dealing with a similar, I mean, not me personally, but I brought issues of trespassing to a town park up to the board and brought up the need for signage. About a month ago formally, though it's been ongoing for a few years. So I think the town needs to communicate internally
Well,
to get some
No, we
decisions
have,
made.
as for your issue, or they have ordered the signs
Oh,
and they're supposed to. I'm,
really?
in fact, I just thought of that today, asking Public Works when they are expected. But they're going to put one at the entrance to each entrance to the road and one at the entrance to the park.
Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate the update. I don't want to digress from our purposes, but was it just as this relates to farm trespassing? What were those orders? Was it Public Works who chaperoned that or spearheaded that
Well,
effort?
they happen to be the people that order the signs,
Okay.
and they will put them in, and the police will decide where they go, and that's
Okay.
what the language, and that's
The
what has
police
been
decided the
done.
language?
Yeah.
Okay.
hmm
Okay. That's helpful context for this
Mhm.
um,
And
section.
I'll research this further.
Thank you, Terry. All right. Any other notes on trespassing or updates?
Sounds like it should be on the agenda next month.
Okay. Report on jumping worms presentation. Christina, yeah, go ahead.
I went to Annis Dobson's Jumping Worms presentation, and I think it was really interesting to know about a problem that is moving into our area, and also see some of kind of the different habitat and like resource concerns that it poses. So basically, as a summary, which I think probably Andrea and Steve, you know a little bit more about this, maybe even than I do, but to summarize, jumping worms are an invasive type of worm that they think originated in the Bronx Zoo, I think. Maybe the Central Park Zoo, but when they brought a new animal in, this was a food source, it very slowly moved, over the course of a century. And now we're seeing it in Connecticut. So it's not a super fast moving invasive. Oh, hi, Chris.
Oh,
Chris.
finally. I'm computer illiterate some days. Sorry.
It was hard for all of us.
It's okay. We're glad you made it. Thanks for trying all this
I've
time.
been working at it for a long time. Go ahead, I'll let you go. Sorry, Christina.
Oh, no,
So
that's all right.
Chris, we're on item number 6 of the agenda, talking
Okay,
about the
okay.
jumping worms.
Okay.
Just one second. My son just came down from his bed. Nope, I'm in my meeting still. Okay, you can talk to Daddy. So basically, jumping worms are this slowly moving invasive species. Annis Dobson's research area is really in forests. Basically, these worms reproduce really quickly, and they're decomposers, as earthworms are, and they eat a lot of leaf litter and the organic material at the top level of soils, which in forests is a very important place for a lot of native and so to establish perennial species. In farmlands, it is less of a problem because farmlands are generally disturbed. And in tilling soil, in moving crops in and out, we're usually not leaving a really thick, sometimes decades old layer of plant material in place. I personally was interested in this difference between farmland and forest land, because some of the farming practices that I'm trying to adopt are adding more mulch or adding things that are supposed to sort of mimic a system that has less soil disturbance and more organic material on the top. I don't know if certain farmers might produce more, or, a habitat where jumping worms may be more destructive than others. But I think that's just kind of an interesting thing for farmers to maybe be aware of. I'll certainly be keeping an eye on that if there are discussions about that in kind of the no-till community. Another important distinction is how they think jumping worms are being moved. And one of the key things is moving large amounts of topsoil, wood chips, things that get piled up and can create an area for worms to come up and live in. And then, a big truck scoops it up and takes it to your farm. So for either homeowners or farmers, if you're using wood chips, to make sure that they're kind of freshly chipped things and that they haven't been sitting in a pile for quite some time, can greatly reduce the likelihood of you bringing worms onto your property. Also, there are some concerns about them coming in through seedlings. If you buy seedlings or transplants from other places, bare root would be optimal. A lot of things that we might have as farmers might not be bare root. And there are some places that might, some places in the country, like if you're using a big wholesaler or something, that might verify that their growing practices are a certain way that could reduce jumping worm control. But the jury's still out on kind of how effective control can be of that if you're bringing in soil from other farms in your products that you're ordering in. And I think those are kind of the most relevant things that I thought. But she is a Woodbridge, Anna Stobson is a Woodbridge resident and really kind of passionate about this. And it was really interesting to hear about this and how it could be affecting farms.
Thank you, Christina. That was an awesome recap. It seems like you retained a lot of really useful information. So, and thank you for attending. When was this? Can you
It was
refresh my
late
memory?
April, maybe April. It was after our last meeting.
Okay.
I think it had gotten postponed from, the first time it was scheduled.
Have you found any on your property? Has anyone encountered any?
I have not found it on mine. I do have neighbors or people who live a mile down the street from me who have gotten wood chips from many sources, and they do have jumping worms. So they could be on the move.
I've been seeing them in way more towns. Like, it's amazing compared to when I first heard about them a couple years ago to this year. They're really present in the woods. And their, quintessential jumping mannerism on the cooler days isn't as well noticeable. They're much more like lethargic. So it's important to, they have a whiter band. Correct me if I'm wrong, Christina, but the coloring of their band is a lighter, not white, but lighter off-white color relative to our more naturalized invasive worms, or non-native invasive earthworms. I'm sorry. Yeah, interesting. Any questions? Well, I think your point of like the no-till operations or the type of farming practices that are less have a lower disturbance impact is really insightful and is interesting. I'm curious to learn more about that. Like, farmers integrating those practices, what risks really are there in the context of jumping worms?
Yeah, and maybe, because, the types of crops I'm growing are annuals or perennials, but perennials that I can either seed myself successfully or could order from or get from a nursery. It might not be as sensitive as something that's a slow growing forest perennial that really needs very particular conditions. It might be basically crop dependent on whether our things are going to survive or not, even in the face of lots of jumping worms. But it'll just be interesting in terms of nutrient cycling and all of those things. I think it's one to watch for people who are interested in their soils and their pests and their organic matter and all of the factors that we're watching.
I think one of the things like I do, you scout your crops and you scout everything. I think that's the most important part of what you should be doing, and just be aware of like what's going on. I mean, that's what I try to do.
Yeah.
I think if you're out there scouting it, and I mean, you're not out there every single day, but different areas when you're planting and everything, has given you an idea of what's going on with your soils. But I do also take like a lot of the soils I have and everything, because I use a lot of leaves for composting and everything like that. And I'm sure Steve uses a lot of leaves as well. But in the beginning of the years, I take some soil, and I don't do no till, I do till and everything, but I bring a lot of the product down to the Connecticut Agricultural Center and tell them what I'm planting, and then they give me an idea what's going on with the soil, and then I just try to feed into, they ask a few questions and stuff. So that's how I do. I do a lot of stuff what I do. So everybody's different though.
Yeah. Well, Chris, that reminds me of something that I don't actually know the details of, but I wanted to mention in terms of scouting, there is a methodology for bringing earthworms to the surface, which involves basically making a concentrate with mustard. I don't know if she uses mustard seed or like prepared mustard, but something about this, you can pour it over either a square foot or a square meter or square yard or something of soil, a certain amount of mustard on the ground, and then I think you cover it and you wait for a few minutes, and the worms come, it like draws the worms to the surface, and then you can try to identify what might be a European earthworm versus a jumping worm, to get an idea. It helps you, I think, get a count of what and how many worms you might have. So in terms of scouting, if you are looking for these, I mean, obviously you might encounter them while you're digging or, while you're in your field. But if someone's really concerned about jumping worms, that might be a good place to start. And I'm sure that methodology is available online. I can look it up and see if I can share it with this group, just in case it is something that people want to put in there.
Christina, I coincidentally have what I think is the most recent publication on jumping worms out of the Ag Station. And you are right, mustard is an irritant that can be used to effectively flush worms out of the soil. Mix 1/3 of a cup of ground yellow mustard seed into 1 gallon of water and pour half of the liquid slowly over 1 square foot of soil. So it's 1/3 cup of ground yellow mustard seed to 1 gallon of water for 1 square foot of soil.
Okay.
Yes, and just keynoting that it is an irritant. So mustard gets used as like a soil fumigant as well too. So like you can grow mustard and then tarp a field, and like you're trying to kill the things in it. So just noting that, yes, it will bring the worms up to the surface, but it's because they're
Irritated.
they're being harmed.
It
yes.
does say
So
here,
just being careful with it.
it says mustard will not harm plants. So are those irritant effects more specific to insects and like that, those types of organisms?
Yeah. I think because it's a soft bodied is why they do that. But I remember from growing in California, like that was one of the treatments pre strawberry fields and things was like you couldn't even do like a mustard cover crop and then tarp it, and you're trying to kill things in the soil. So obviously, it's an irritant on this. But I just wanted to note that
Oh,
that's
thank
what's
you.
happening with it.
That's a great note. The other thing it says, acknowledging there are no well-established pesticides for these species, that because they live mostly in the top 2 inches of the soil, as you said, Christina, road tilling before May 30th, but after May 15th in Connecticut, many juvenile worms can be killed. So tilling in October is ineffective because cocoons have already been produced. So if that's helpful, I don't know. I guess there's a window in early in the growing season.
April 30th to May 15th, you said? Or
No, I'm
before-
sorry, before May 30th, but after May 15th is how they worded it. I don't know why, but so there's like a 2-week window, the second half of May in Connecticut. And they said further north in New England, timing would be later, more in mid-June. Just must be timed with their life cycle in our climate. And so I'd imagine that date range will change over time. But something to consider. I'll email this publication out, though it's on their website. It really goes into a lot of approaches one can take with solarization, with biochar, with dish soap and vinegar and things like that. So it seems like there might be some options that farmers or gardeners can find what if any kind of works best or fits in with their practices and approach.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so the last item on our agenda, I know we're coming up on 9 o'clock, but is to identify items to bring to the Board of Selectmen this year. Or I guess
One of the items that has come up is we have a new board coming on. We have certain pieces of land that have been identified to be leased for farming. Jason Morrill called me and he's interested in farming a piece on, excuse me, he's interested in farming a piece on Racebrook Road, which I always called the old Humphreys place. I think it's 1159 Racebrook. It's just down the street from his house. Chris, it's the old house right next door to that old house where Polly Peck grew up, Polly Schultz grew up.
Yeah.
Do you know?
I know
You know which
yep.
one that is?
I do.
Down,
Jerry, yes.
yeah, down near the Milfordside Cemetery. So
Right.
I thought that you might want to bring, and I told him he'd have to wait for the next board, that this board was not going to be making any decisions at this time. So I was thinking this is something you might bring up to the new board about identifying additional properties that they might consider leasing or changing the way they lease, or, and I thought you might want to put together something that would be pertinent to the agricultural community if you wanted
Anybody?
to.
Jerry,
Thank you, Jerry.
does anybody manage the property now or just
No.
the town?
No,
Okay.
it's just there.
Yeah.
What
This
the
is the
log
one that-
goes behind goes through the back third of it. And
Right.
I don't know what the access is. I haven't been down that way in a long time, and the day is long gone where you could stop your car and take a look. So, you know,
Do you know the size of the parcel? Not like,
no,
Okay.
I don't know the size of the tillable. Could only be probably, I don't know.
well, this is, yes.
A neighbor
Yeah.
or two, maybe.
I don't think it's much. So this is very close to Massaro. I know exactly where it is, and Jason had mentioned it to me, and I suggested he, bring it to us for discussion. But it's not. I don't think it's large.
Mm-mm.
I don't think it really matters. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Well, Jerry, I totally support your suggestion and think that is, something that's been in the back of my mind for a long time now. That the Ag Commission is well positioned and poised to do is kind of assess town-owned property and farmable property and see what we're working with.
So I thought that's something you might put on your radar.
Thank you.
Jerry, you said that there were, I think you said parcels. Is the town talking about other parcels, or are these just ones that individuals have come up with? Do you have a list of things that we could review, or is that something that we could bring to the table?
Well, you could. The parcels of land right now are all leased. They're the ones that where Chris leases down on Litchfield, and there's several hay fields around the Darling house. There's your piece, Christina, and there's the Fitzgerald property. Really, that's all there is right now. Also, there's, though I've never seen them, there's 3 fields up at Elderslie somewhere that, Arnold, Keith Arnold hays for bedding. It's not good hay. It's just grass and probably some scrub.
What about that parcel? I'm forgetting the last name. I want to say Wiseman, but that's not right. It's town-owned property that's near, kind of back behind Ansonia Road, in between like Ansonia and Racebrook, in the back of that corner. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? With my very descriptive introduction there.
I know we have some property. I think one of the Zwicks gave us some property, Jerry, didn't they?
Yes,
Oh,
Tim Hayes that.
Moors?
Yeah,
That's
Tim Hayes,
almost
right.
Yeah, that's on Seymour Road. It's almost
Right.
impossible to get to. And he
Right.
has an agreement with whoever lives in the house there. He goes in through their driveway.
Okay. So that's one property I'm thinking of.
Mhm.
You're talking Ansonia and Racebrook?
Yeah,
Andrew?
what I'm talking about is behind Ansonia. And by behind, I mean, I think like on the northern side of the road. You don't see it from the road. It's behind a private property, farmhouse that the Ramoses live in, if you're familiar with that home.
Oh, what are you talking about?
And I'll be more specific. I'll look it up and I'll follow up with everyone via email. I'm looking in Google Maps and I can see the acreage. I just don't see the name. It's kind of
I
in
know
between. It's back off of North, like behind Northrop, Ansonia, and Racebrook, in that little nook, I guess, near the Weppawag River.
Oh yeah, I think I'm seeing what you're seeing. Is that
It's not I guess it's more forest land. I wasn't sure. I just recently learned that the town owned this chunk. So it wouldn't be farmable without timber harvesting or land clearing. I guess. But to the point of this agenda item, I think it is a great idea to put together a list, and if it could be, I could do it with ArcMap, have a geo-referenceable spatial representation of our town-owned properties. I think, and that could be helpful. All of the above, current fields and not fields, with the focus on already farmable land. Is there anything else? I think the signage and trespassing is something, depending on information we gather, we can bring to the board if it, once we have a better understanding of the issue.
Mhm.
How do we feel about extending leases again? Like we will have a new board come November. Is this something we want to re-present?
Absolutely.
I think you
It seemed
always
like we
want to,
what we found was a
that way.
roadblock.
Yes. So I'm glad to hear you say that, because I fully support being persistent in this endeavor.
It never hurts to keep asking, Andrea, you know what I mean? And I think with some new people, you might have an open mind, and an open mind means, they can look at it in a different way. And I think that's what it would be beneficial. Beneficial to us. It's part of our job, to ask. And if we don't ask, then we're not doing our job.
I think where we really left off with it, though, was that the Board of Selectmen was in favor of doing it, and what we found was the sort of town charter and legal obstacle without a
Mhm.
solution. And they had sort of asked, like, well, how do others do this? They sort of put it back on our plate, like, you tell us how others are doing it, and maybe that'll work. But I think it'd be nice to work with someone, if we can find someone, when there's a new group in there who may be interested in doing it, or working with the town council on it as well, because Jerry Weiner seemed to find the obstacle but not the way around it.
Exactly. Well said. Yeah.
Mhm.
So because really it would just take one approach is charter reform, amending the charter, and that's something we can do. It's not unprecedented. So yes, let's go. I'm excited about that. We'll see how it goes, but I think we can be more solution oriented.
Well, do you want to each put your thinking cap on and put together a list to go over at the November meeting that you might be interested in?
Sounds good.
That sounds good, Jerry. I think that's a good idea. Then we could submit it to you, Jerry, and then, you could follow up with us as committee members saying, okay, these are what we got going. And then we could, if anybody else wants to add to it, we can add to it and move forward with it.
Okay.
So I'm good with that. Jerry, there's one thing I was going to say. There's another piece that we cut down now. It's Harriet Meese has a piece of property there, and I know.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
that came to mind first when Andrea was speaking, and then I realized, no, she's saying Ansonia. So
yeah, it's Ansonia. That's another piece, but she has a lot of property, and she has a caretaker now, basically, and so that's something the town is. I don't know what's going to happen there, but the town has some of that property there, and I think it's something that's going to be coming in the near future. Something's going to be happening there.
okay.
That's just my my thought. I'm
You-
not gonna
you
say
mean
it is.
like-
but
Like a land use change,
Maybe, I don't know what she wants to do.
Okay.
But she has a person that basically, manages everything for her.
Yeah. Now you're talking
everything
about
she does.
the piece that she still owns on Ford Road.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
And
And
then
the
she has some nice
town
Yeah.
owns the piece off of off of the Rimmon.
Rimmon Road, but
Yeah.
you come to the back side of it and then she
Mhm.
owns all that property there.
Right.
So there's some nice property there, but you have to go up through her house, or if you come through Rimmon Road, you gotta go through these trails that are,
Hmm.
you sort of gotta know what you're doing to get back there, but you can
Yeah.
get there. So
And
I
you,
see,
you do the haying
Yeah.
there, right? And
yeah,
You
yeah.
mow and yeah.
Mm.
we keep it
Chris-
down and keep up with it, but and then we go through some, there's an attorney that we deal with in New York. Just that I can go through the property, they want to see insurance certificates. They want to, that you're not just approaching on the property and, if someone gets hurt, they want to make sure that they're covered.
Mm.
So that's where I send everything to.
I do think when we make our list of town-owned land, it might, I don't know. I'll throw this out there. We can think about it, or maybe you have a gut reaction. But there are privately owned farmlands that might be vulnerable to, going away with the passing of the landowners or homeowners, and without estate planning or conservation easements. And I don't know what role, if any, the Ag Commission wants to play in maybe identifying some of those vulnerable parcels and advocating, or maybe not advocating because it's private land, but providing information, like targeted outreach to those landowners about estate planning and potentials of selling development rights, etc.
I think that the Conservation Commission and the and CUPOP have been working just on those ideas. I know conservation does all the time. They're always identifying properties that are vulnerable.
Okay. So, okay.
Now, just what Tim does with that information, I don't know. But I know they identify them.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll give Tim a call
Mm-hmm.
and learn a little bit more about that process.
I'm just add to the list. I'm putting together the estate planning resource as well.
Yes, that's what thank you, Steve. I think that's a great idea. Okay. Anything else? It seems like we already have a few really good ideas of what to focus on this year. But I look forward to discussing others if they arise over the next month.
Well, you want to make a motion to adjourn, Andrea?
Sure, yeah, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All right. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
All in favor.
All right.
I hope you had a great season at your farm stand. I think today was the last day.
Today was the last day. It was a long
Congratulations.
year. Went through a lot of crazy stuff this year. I think every year you go through it, but it is a lot of fun. And we wouldn't be here doing it if you didn't love it.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you. And sorry I screwed up. I just couldn't get it going. Finally, I had Troy. I said, "You got to come over here. You got to do something for me." So I'm in my
I
office.
used to have
here.
your kids live close, huh?
Yeah, it is. I'll tell you, it's a benefit.
I get those same calls, Chris.
Okay. And Steve, thanks for calling me and everything. And,
I
I
love-
called Steve and I said, I'm working at it. I'm working at it. Just, I started panicking. And so we changed a few things here and I got it finally. But thank you very much. I appreciate it. So,
Sorry you had to deal with that, Chris, but thanks for trying
yeah.
and for making it.
Thanks for running everything, Andrea. Did a great job. Thanks, Steve. Thanks,
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 Christine.
Andrea.
All right,
Thanks,
thank you,
Jerry.
Jerry.
Thanks,
We don't
Jerry.
have too many more meetings with Jerry. She's going to be retiring, remember?
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
So, we love you, Jerry.
48 years, 6 months, and 2 days.
Okay.
Wow.
All righty.
Take care.
Good night, you guys.
See you next one.
Thank you
All
all.
right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jerry.
Bye-bye. Bye.